This is To Wit, a podcast for women in tech doing life. Hello, this is Melinda Smith. Christy Campbell says hello. This is a long overdue episode, and due to many factors in the world, personal and pandemic and socially, we haven't gotten around to recording the intro and outro, and it's doing a disservice to this guest. So first, I want to apologize, Melanie. This is not typical of us to wait nearly 2 months to get an interview out. So I am sorry that this is long overdue. And to our listeners, well worth the listen. She's an amazing entrepreneur. Get to hear her story about Spekit, and an ally and a friend. And, the Two Wit podcast also wants to just recognize that Black Lives Matter. Please vote and try and stay safe out there. Please wear your mask. And honestly, just stay indoors if you can. We got to get through these next couple months together. So without further ado, Melanie from Spekit will tell you her story and some fun anecdotes about how we all met. And I hope you enjoy. And Christy and I will be back very soon.
Hello, that's the official start to the podcast. Is the wine glass on the counter.
It is
welcome, and this one at least. Welcome to our special guest, Melanie. I'm really the outlier here in that you're both in Colorado.
Yes, it is our typical afternoon storms in the summer.
We could finally see the sky today. We've had really bad fires.
Yes. We decided to take our little tiny person on her first long bike ride yesterday without looking at the weather. So we came home drenched, just completely drenched. Because we're at the park and it was downpouring. I'm like, well, we got to get ourselves and the bikes home. Yeah.
I mean, at some point, once you get stuck in the rain, you just have to accept it.
It's fine. It's summer rain. It's not like we're freezing.
And dance
in the rain. Welcome to the show, Melanie. No one out there knows this, but this is our second attempt because life, COVID, 2020, and tech issues.
I love that Melinda likes to call herself out. Again, no one would know this, but I'm going to tell you anyway.
Yeah. And somehow it excuses not recording for months. I just, life.
We've persevered and we're back together.
It's going to be a great time.
Yeah, it already is. Buckle up. Sit on down. So let's.
Interestingly, honestly, not on purpose, I'm currently wearing my Witness Success shirt from Nashville. I got 2 of them by some magic, and they are really one of my COVID work from home staples.
They're the best. They're so
very soft. And that's really I'm not wearing pants that zip. I'm not wearing underwires. And I'm strongly prioritizing soft t-shirts.
Yeah. And that's where you two met.
Yeah. Well, I Witness. So it's so funny.
Blue sprinkled drinks.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, it would have been memorable anyway, but yes.
It would.
Stephanie first brought edible glitter. So our cocktails were glittery and it was super fun. But yeah, it's one of those, I don't know if you've ever had this where you meet someone and then you tell your other friend, you're like, oh my God, I met this person and I really like them. And the other friend's like, I totally know them and I also like them.
I'm so on board.
Or maybe that's just me and Melinda talking about Melanie, but that's what happened. So
I feel like that happens a lot within the Salesforce, micro ecosystem that goes to a lot of these dreaming events. They're just fun bonding experience. And I feel like everyone's just super laid back, easygoing, also badasses in their careers, slowly running the world on, on the IT side of the business, holding the whole revenue organization afloat, but drinking blue sparkled drinks.
Did you or did you not check your doo-doo for glitter?
I did not, because I did not know that was something that I was supposed to do.
It doesn't say that on the container.
That would be the thing though. I would need to, I don't know why. I don't know if need to see the way I want to put it, but I would be curious. I mean, I'm not
I mean,
going
it
to
wouldn't
dig
have
for the toilet.
surprised me if it had happened, but I did not specifically investigate that
This is true.
situation.
You probably were like, I just have to poop and leave, and not like, there's not usually a second task while you're in there doing the task. There's not like the, oh, and by the way, unless
I mean, I
you're
lost
a
a
dude.
mascara in the bathroom, and I literally don't know how. It was like a pedestal sink and a toilet in a powder room. There was not many options,
Uh-huh.
and somehow I lost
A
a
hole.
bar of mascara, which is why I remember. Because I was like, oh, can I see this for a second? And then I just never returned it.
Ugh. Speaking of events, I miss other humans. Events
We'd even
so
do the learning
much.
part just to do
I
the
would
hang
even
out.
do the learning part just to hang out. I would even attend a session. Do you remember? Okay, I don't know if I told you this, Christy, but Melanie, this is funny. So we were looking at new apps when Witness Success. I can't remember if we were thinking about it for this year or whatever, but we found this really cool app that's like an event app and has a heat map and it can track you on your badge, and it's like way more than Witness
Does
Success
that
needs.
map anything?
No, it's oh my God, what is it called? I'm not going to remember, but I'll put it in the show notes. But it's specific around events. So then, like, you'd have a badge on, and like, if you were supposed to go somewhere, your little badge would like flash red, like it's time for your event, it's time for your session. It had
Okay,
all these
calm
cool
down.
features. No, it was so freaking cool, way out of our budget. But the thing that made me laugh is like it could tell you like where people are, and I was cracking up because I was like, well, you'd know that if there was a culmination of dots at the bar, it'd be most of the MVPs that are like, I don't need to learn, I just want to drink. It's like, or people that have gone to enough events where it's like, I like learning, don't get me wrong, but usually it's there to connect and network and be with your people. And I just thought it would be funny if you could see a heat map and just see this congregation
The
at a bar.
slow ebb.
Yeah,
Right.
Andrea, and whenever I couldn't find Andrea at Witness, I would just venture outside of the conference downstairs, and she'd be hanging at the bar with
Well,
one of you guys. I was like, okay, here we are.
okay, so the funny thing about that hotel in Nashville, they had like a long table at the bar, almost like a banquety type table with,
Uh-huh.
and it
Yeah.
was like there was one session where just like 10 of us ended up down there. And so let's have a bottle of wine, but like I agree that that's when you have some interesting conversations.
Oh,
Oh
totally.
yeah.
It's, if I had to like look back over the last years at the success of Spekit, like so much more of it has been not necessarily like at bars per se, because I do think like the hard part about that is it does alienate some people that aren't
Totally.
necessarily like drinkers, and that's something that I like try and be somewhat, try and be aware of. But a lot of like the network and the connections that have like led to like one person or the next, like if I look back at like, how do I know this person? It's like, oh, I know them through this person, and then through this person, and then through it's like, oh, when I met that person, in Nashville
Yeah.
at the bar, right? And like I think it just shows that like connections and like business in a way can be done like you just never know where like
Not
those
just on the
like
golf course.
yeah, no, like seriously. I mean, it's so different than like reaching out to someone LinkedIn, like, hey, would love to get your feedback on my new Salesforce ecosystem app.
Yeah.
Like,
Well,
you
and
know,
that in like the virtual events, there's just not the ad hoc casual conversations that you get to meet. Like, oh my gosh, I was just talking to so-and-so, they would totally love your product, or someone else I know just had that issue. And I mean,
yeah, that engagement challenge I think is like the biggest challenge that like teams are facing. I mean, for us, like like really for any app in the Salesforce ecosystem, like for us, like over 80% of our pipeline came from like our booths at like realistically bigger events like the Dreamforce and Trailhead DXs of the world, but also these like small ones. So we had to completely like rethink like, okay, how do we
yeah.
for the fact and it wasn't like people that we knew that was coming up to our booth. Like these were just complete like we just brought on Southwest Airlines this summer as a customer.
Ooh,
Really
congratulations.
they're phenomenal. But like they just randomly stumbled upon our booth at Dreamforce, and just like had we tried to like get into that like account, it would have taken us, who knows how long, like years to try and go in. But no, they just like they stumbled upon us, they saw a demo at the booth, and then like all of a sudden they were following up and wanting a demo. And so for a lot of vendors, like that's been the hardest part of like not having these events is like I feel like I kind of separate like the two things. It's just like me as like I want to have fun and like meet cool people, scenario versus like, hey, I'm at our booth and I'm like in selling mode with my team. And like the second piece, I feel like I can still reach out to people and like have fun, but that first piece has been like really hard
I
as
bet. How are
but
you navigating that?
To be honest, like I really count our blessings because we're just in the right space right now to weather out
Right.
this storm. Like we're in remote employee training. And so if there's ever been a time that companies
Right.
are like, if there's ever been a time that like companies are like, oh wow, like how are we going to deploy Salesforce now across our 14 different offices and like everyone's at home, like, so we actually had our best quarter by like miles last quarter.
Wow.
So we've been really lucky and like brought on some good team members and stuff. So I think we're really fortunate, but I know that hasn't been the same for everyone, just depending on like what kind of app that they're selling and parties. And like I don't know about you guys, but like a lot of teams like just like completely just like threw their roadmap up in the air when all this happened. They're like,
Oh
okay,
yeah.
what do we actually need right now? Right. Because like
Yeah.
people can't handle that much change. Like how are we going to coordinate these big things? Like, do we really need to roll out that one piece of software? And so it's just been, I think, an interesting few months just seeing like how many companies have like accelerated their transformation or just like been like, I don't know what to do here. So.
Yeah, I've had some clients, higher ed that were planning for big events. And they were like, well, maybe we rethink the marketing, or actually, why don't we do the marketing later and focus on, I don't know, updated alumni records. So yeah, it has been interesting because some of these too were like just hot, like I gotta get this done in 3 months. Blah. And now they're like, meh, whatever. I was like, remember that thing I asked you for last week, the week before, and the week before? And they're like, it's fine. I was like, well, all right, cool. If you're not in a hurry, I'm not in a hurry.
100%. Yeah, we've like shifted to like, I'm like, okay, if we're not going to get this like quantity of leads from like whatever, like luckily like now like we're at a place where like we get, a good amount of like just organic traffic and social and stuff, but we've actually shifted to trying to create those virtual, like kind of like smaller engagements. So we're doing like these, like, we're just kicking them off like virtual happy hours where basically like we'll find like, either prospects or like some of our clients that we feel like would just like really enjoy like getting to like share knowledge in whatever like space they're in or role, and then inviting like 10 of them or so and sending them like a box of wine and then doing like a virtual like
fun
with people. So we're about to kick one off because I got invited to one and it was so fun. I'm like, wait, why aren't we doing this? This is a blast. I was like, and I don't like, it's not hard if you're just setting wine. Like they sent me 3 half bottles and cheese and crackers. I'm like, yeah,
yes,
sure, I'll network
100%.
You do a whiskey version of that, Melinda?
I mean,
you can do, I think any kinds. Yes, I have, but I did a whiskey online tasting. They sent us I picked it up, and then the master distiller had us on Zoom. But I don't know if I talked about this before, but it's so funny to see people struggle with tech right now that aren't used to it, because he just was like, wait, I can't hear you. Hold on. Let me look at the chat. And it was like an hour, and he's like answering our old questions. He tried. He did a really good job, but like seeing the teachers struggle too with the tech. And
I saw a tweet yesterday about that. It's just like, like who knew teachers needed to know, like beyond every other skill set they already needed to know. Like, by the way, in 2020, you need to be like an IT tech ops and like an IT person and a technician and a trainer and like all these.
You need to walk a 7-year-old through it from another location. Good luck. Yeah.
Well,
have fun.
So that's interesting because I feel like your company started kind of because you identified a niche, right? And that's sort of related to like, so it doesn't surprise me you've had a great quarter, right? Because I think there's
like training people, because like if you think about like Salesforce admins, like anyone that was planning to like roll out, like we brought on one of our biggest customers, their financial institution. They had 800 users that they were going to roll out Salesforce. They've been working on the Salesforce implementation for 3 years. After that, they're rolling out Encina later this year, and they're like, they are used to having everyone in the office, right? And now they're like, okay, now we've got 1,800 employees that are just like, generally speaking, not used to working remote. We've already had to like buy new computers and like do all this stuff for. And now we're shifting from this system that we've had for 25 years over to Salesforce for the first time, and everyone's remote. And it's just like, people have Zoom fatigue. You can't expect like users to sit for 8 hours on a Zoom, because originally they were going to do these like 3-day in-person trainings, which no matter what, like isn't actually going to like necessarily drive like the adoption that you're looking for long term, but at least is like better than nothing. But in this case, like they're like, we just didn't even have an option, like we needed to be able to have our just end users be self-sufficient.
The idea of Zoom fatigue is interesting too, because I was thinking about that with Salesforce Saturday and with the user group, like I kind of had a cadence, especially because the leaders in Charlotte that are better adults than me, that lead the other groups, have like every fourth Friday and every third Wednesday, and so it's like more of a pattern I can depend on. And now it's like, oh, was Salesforce Saturday yesterday? Like I'm sleeping on Saturdays,
Yeah.
even though I don't feel like I should be tired, but like the week feels long, and there's just not the same.
I
I don't
think
know.
that's like, I think the Zoom fatigue in particular has hit frontline managers and like leadership the most, generally speaking, within organizations. I think like there's a certain amount of empathy to have, honestly, for management and leadership, because, you know, if you're just being in front of a computer for 8 hours a day is exhausting enough, right? If you're like
Well,
alone and not communicating, but if you're actively speaking, like I'm on average, like to lead my chief of staff, like I was just like so exhausted come like 3 p.m. I'm like, oh, like every day for a while. And she's like, Mel, like I went back 2 weeks of your schedule. You're on 17 on average Zoom calls per day.
Oh God.
Internal team meeting. Oh yeah. Like from 7:30 a.m. to 7 p.m. It is like nonstop. Like some days I get a 30-minute break. If someone cancels a meeting, I'm like, they apologize. I'm like, please don't apologize. Like,
I love you. Yeah.
and then there's work to do, right? And so, and I think a lot of leaders and managers are in more Zoom meetings than they've ever been before, because they're like, wait, I need to check in with Melinda. I need to check in with, you know, Chrissy. I need to check in with all these people, right? To kind of figure out. And obviously then there's Slack. You're getting pinged every 5 seconds. Like, it's just, I feel like a few times, like when I've had late meetings, I haven't showed up the way that I wanted to, either because I'm just like exhausted or I'm just snappy.
Like you said, you're burnt.
I'm just,
It's so much,
you know.
like you said, so much activeness. It's the difference between like a quick call, or if you're just working on your computer configuring, you can like take a break. Yeah, it's not the same. You know, my mom has come to visit, and I work from the spare room. And she was funny because she's like, what time's your first call? And she's like, I'll make sure that the room's organized. And I was like, no, we're all beyond that. I was like, I show up in my headband and the outfit I worked out in. Half the time the kid comes in the room. Like, no, like I am not trying to put on any airs right now. Like this bed is not made. I don't have a bra
clothes
on.
That's really all that.
Yeah, that's, sorry,
if I turn the camera on, which.
But I think like that's probably my favorite piece, is just like the level of like
humanity
and like empathy that's been brought in like to every conversation. Especially like it made me realize like how little, like I feel like I know my coworkers so well, and I feel like I try and like invest in like understanding, and then like you realize like, wow, I really did, you know, just like, oh wait, you have an album of XYZ on your wall. It's like, I've been to 40 of their shows. It's like, tell me more. What?
Yeah.
The ways, or like someone has like a baby, like we do, like, you know, I'm on calls with some pretty senior people that normally it's just like, oh my goodness, like we, you know, traditionally
nobody make a noise.
Not in a baseball cap.
You know, you're just like, okay, we need to make sure that we're like, you know, we've got the whole like, you know, QPR ready and stuff. And then they show up and it's like, I'm with my 1-year-old baby. It's just like, hope you don't mind. It's like, no, like I love that. Great. We can have a human to human conversation. Like, you've got a problem, we can solve it. Like, let's talk like humans and not like robots, you know? So I think it's just helped like remind us all that like, yes, like you might be selling to one of your clients, or you might be like serving one of your clients, or like they might be like giving you requirements. Like as a consultant, I know, Melinda, like sometimes it can feel like, you know, the client needs this, they're changing things last minute. Well, it's like the client, it's just like, for us, it's like the prospect, you know, it's easy to kind of put like labels on people. And then like, once you're on that call with them, you're like, oh wait, no, you're just another one of
and
me.
It's different when you see a person. It's like forced authenticity, which is beautiful, 100%. Because I can't put you in this box of you're a problematic client if I see that you're also a new dad. Like, you're not problematic or unresponsive. You are holding an infant right now. Like, you know, and I don't typically think that. I try not to, you know, I try to lead with a lot of empathy, but still it's easy to get frustrated with people at times. And then you see their faces and they look as beat as you do, or they're just like, hi. I'm like, hey pal.
Well, it's interesting because I don't think that right now our company's default is to have cameras on.
It wasn't before this. We took kind of a stance of no. Like one of the founders was like, absolutely not. And now I do. And now I'm kind of digging seeing the people. It's a little hard because I take notes. So I always preface with like, hey, I'm not paying attention. I'm not like, you know, chatting over here. I'm taking notes so they know that I'm not just checked out. But we never used to. And now I'm like, I like it.
We've did it for twofolds, honestly. two reasons. Like one, you know, when I moved to Denver, Zari, my co-founders in San Francisco, we like just missed each other and wanted to see each other. And then when we like, you know, slowly grew the team, and then we've got our team in Pakistan, that's where she's from originally, you know, it was kind of like a sometimes on, sometimes off, you know, like we had different schedules, like first thing in the morning and late at night for them. Like we weren't going to ask people to put the camera on, but I think like Zari and I kind of drove people being on camera. And then honestly, on the sales side, there's something I think, especially salespeople. One, I've never been a salesperson, so I want to put that out there. Like I was always the ops, like biz tech person. And so I honestly used to be on my high horse thinking like, oh, you're a salesperson. You kind of say the same thing every day and like make a lot of money. And like, you know, I just didn't realize how hard of a profession it is when you're like really, really trying to understand like how do you solve someone's problem, and et cetera. And so now that I've, you know, officially or unofficially been in sales for 2 years, I'm like, damn, that is the hardest job I've ever worked in my entire life. Anyway, and I think like, especially in sales, we tend to put a label on them where it's just like, oh, here's a sales rep, like following up with me again for the third time. Right. And it's easy if you don't have like the face and like that human aspect to just kind of like label them and be like, this person's hitting me up again. Like he doesn't get that if I'm not responding, I'm not interested. It's like, no, this guy like put a lot of time and effort into like, you know, thinking, and he thinks that there's a real potential solution. So for us, I read a lot of like studies from a psychological standpoint that showed that like in sales, like the reason why like so many deals are done over like golf and that kind of stuff is because of like the face-to-face, like, hey, I'm a person, I'm not like this label. And so on the sales side, we'd always put the camera on, even if our clients didn't, right? So that they can see like, hey, this is like me, Melanie, talking to you, or me, Freddie, talking to you. It's not just like this Spekit rep across the screen doing
My
that.
headshot.
Yeah, exactly. But now, like, honestly, just because I'm on so many and I'm just get exhausted, and sometimes I just want to be able to like go like this on a call and like listen. And it's not that I'm not engaged, I'm literally just exhausted. So if my camera's off, like it's either because like my Wi-Fi is actually problematic, or sometimes it's because my Wi-Fi is problematic, but I'm actually like,
air quotes. Yeah.
So you want to know what's
down to here, I'm exhausted. I've got like, I can't do this right now.
So what's funny about the headshot comment, so I don't like have a lot of pictures of myself on my work computer, right? So after Dreamforce at some point, pretty much anytime you're at a Salesforce event, it's possible you're going to have a lay on or something Hawaiian related to you. But there was like a Dreamforce breakfast, and I took a picture with somebody, and I had a drink umbrella in my ear. And like, for some reason, that's the picture I've used at work. So one of our founders like commented on it when I asked a question on our all company meeting. And he was like, look at your picture. You look so happy. It's like,
I'm not in my home.
it's probably morning drinking.
Which is the best.
Just kidding. I was at Dreamforce paying a lot of attention.
Yeah.
All the sessions. Okay. So I want to hear the Spekit journey. I know that we kind of touched on like a little bit here and there, but like, were you always entrepreneurial minded, or was it, you know, you just found a need? Like I don't know. I feel like you've been in, if you do Salesforce long enough, there's always a moment where you're like, oh, I should create an app for this. And then you don't do it because it seems really hard. But like, were you there, or were you just like, yep, I have my business starter, I always have been, or how did that happen?
So I think like from a young age, like I was always like, you know, the kind of like leader type, right? I always saw myself like, you know, growing up and like eventually like running into, you know, becoming like a leader of a company, but not necessarily starting my own. Like that was honestly not originally like my goal. Though my dad says I once said a comment to him at 16, like I want to work for myself one day, but I think I meant like I just like want to be my own manager, not necessarily start a company from scratch, because geez, it's a lot of work. But I did love, like I love problem solving more than anything else. And I think like that's where like the Salesforce admin, Salesforce product owner, you name it, like role is just the perfect fit for anyone that loves problem solving, because that is all you do. You're constantly just looking at like, okay, here's this problem, or here's this, you know, need that the business has, like, here's 20 different ways that I can do it. What's going to be the best approach? And like, you know, and then building, like, I love that piece. And so I kind of naturally fell into one, working for a startup where you're always problem solving. That's basically where I started my career. And then two, I ended up falling into Salesforce because I'd been at the company for like over a year. I was previously on the client facing side, just on the operations piece. And then basically they'd implemented Salesforce. We'd had it for a year. No one had been using it because it had been implemented correctly. And I mean, there's so many, that's like a whole podcast.
Accidental admin. That's how we're
no, it really wasn't
born to greatness.
Yeah. And like the way it happened is like our CEO came up to me. He's like, hey, the leadership team voted. I wasn't on leadership at that point in time. He's like, and we're getting rid of Salesforce. We're going to build our own in-house CRM. And at the time, like we'd raised $60 million as a VC-backed tech company, which like for context is a lot of money, right? We had grown from 15 to 150 people in 2 years. Like we were in this like insane, like just everything's moving, like we're growing like crazy. And I'm like, hold up, like we do not have to build our own CRM. Like what is this madness?
Like why take that on?
Exactly. And we were also in the heart of San Francisco, right? So I was literally on First and Market looking at the Salesforce Tower at the time that was under construction. And I was like, listen, one, unfortunately, I knew that our tech team had not implemented it correctly. And two, like Salesforce is clearly doing something right if they're building this thing in the middle of San Francisco. Like we did it wrong. And I was like, that's crazy. Like we shouldn't do that. He's like, well, you've got 3 weeks to prove us wrong. I was like, problem solved. And so
challenge accepted.
When I say like I spent more hours than I can possibly count on, just like literally probably pulling 18, 20 hours a day, just like learning everything I need to know. And like, I'd luckily, because of my background, I was leading business operations at the time. So I'd already implemented a number of other tools like Outreach and even before that, Yesware, and like worked with our technical architects internally on like building custom internal apps across the team. So like I knew like the whole like data modeling piece, like I knew what we needed in Salesforce based on our business and stuff. And so what I really needed to learn was just like, okay, how do we build like the basic workflows and custom objects and stuff? And so I basically focused on one team and built that piece out, proved it out over 3 weeks, and then like saved Salesforce for the company. And then 2 years later, I was like basically like running whatever. And it was a big success, which it was also like really fun. And that was the first time, like, honestly, that I felt like I'd like really accomplished something.
I was say that's super rewarding.
Yeah, it was huge, super, because we'd spent over $700,000 in that first year between resources and implementation and licenses and stuff. So being able to like, not just have that as a sunk cost and be like, and like the amount of time it would have taken to build something else, and those resources would have been diverted from like, you know, everything
product
to building our, you know, would have been a terrible business decision. And I think like that lesson taught me a few things. Like one, like take risks and like speak up, and like, you know, sometimes you just got to do it.
Challenge accepted. That's right.
But in the process too is where I identified like the challenges of like, okay, well, I'm like all in, like that's my only mission. It's just like building out Salesforce. But meanwhile, I've got this like set of employees, our users, that like we'd been pushing Salesforce. It was not working for them. No one was using it. They were in real estate finance. So like not exactly your like standard Salesforce user at the time. And so I had to like completely resell them on Salesforce, get them up to speed, make it easy for them, because like otherwise everyone's going to roll your eyes at you every time. Like I was constantly like making changes, which was, you know, designed to help them get more value and like save them time and like get more money if depending on their roles. But I was, you know, being met with a lot of resistance. And so that's when I started looking at like, okay, how can I just like make sure that like when they're in Salesforce, they don't get lost, they know what to do, you know, they can figure things out. And so that was really kind of the start of me looking at different solutions around Salesforce training, just to make it, I was just like, how can I just make this easier? And
like more than required fields and validation roles.
Yeah, exactly. Just like,
sorry, I was just saying, it's an interesting example of, sometimes the disconnect, right? Like like you're saying, you're coming from operations and you have the mindset potentially of both the end user and like really their goals, and then kind of the connection to leadership and what they need to get out of it. And it can be tough to marry those things in a way that it doesn't just feel like draconian, like they're telling me to put it in Salesforce, so I'm putting it in Salesforce, but to add value from both directions.
Totally. And I think like that's why like as Salesforce, you know, whatever role you want to call it, whether it's an admin, business analyst, architect, etc., like you might not consider yourself a salesperson, but I've like been saying this now for quite some time. Like if you are a Salesforce owner of any type, you are a salesperson. You're just selling internally. You're selling on the best solution to your leadership, on like the the best path forward. You're getting like, okay, I've got two different like stakeholder groups that want two different things. Like, how do I prioritize the roadmap? Like, you're constantly kind of like selling and convincing. And I think like that's one of the best skill sets actually you can learn as someone that's building Salesforce, is like, and I think that's how you kind of accelerate your career in Salesforce beyond just like, hey, I know how to build fields and objects and workflow rules and approval processes. It's like, hey, I know how to get buy-in, right? I know how to like get people like to actually buy into like the why behind why we're doing this, and not just like, hey guys, built out this new workflow, go
do it.
Yeah, that
Hey.
is interesting, because I feel like that's really a differentiator from quote unquote junior admin, and one of the potential, not deficiencies of Trailhead, right? But like you can learn how to do it. But
Yeah.
I think it's a whole different mindset to the why to do it,
Yeah.
and is it the right thing? And I think at some point that just takes experience to, because sometimes it is the CEO comes to you and is like, build me a field. And you're like, why? Because if I can build you a field and a report on it, but if no one fills it out because they don't care, or if we add one more field to the 50 fields we already gave them, you're going to get BS data. Like, what are you actually trying to do to then, again, have some knowledge of the business and this, like, that pivot from like, can Salesforce do this? It's not a binary question, right? Like, it can do. Our joke is, with enough time, money, and resources, right, we can do anything. But should we, right? And what's the value in the short term and the long term? And from an implementation perspective, we might spend $700,000 and then nobody likes it because
100%.
Melanie decided all the things without talking to anybody else,
Yeah, that internal like championing is a really big piece. And that's actually like part of what, I consider ourselves, like when I tell our, when I'm talking to a client for the first time, I'm like, I really think of ourselves like not just as your vendor, but as your partner. Because like, yes, we're going to give you like the software that makes it easy to train and to, do all these things. But more than anything, like adding another tool on top of a bunch of tools isn't going to solve your underlying problem. Like, we're going to like talk about like, how do you build a culture of adoption? Like, what are some of like the learnings that I've learned firsthand, that now I've learned from like our hundreds of customers, that I can share with you guys around like, hey, if you're thinking about like rolling out Salesforce virtually, like here's some like things to incorporate. An 8-hour Zoom session is probably not going to get people fired up about Salesforce, right? Like, how can you make it fun?
Ooh.
How can you like think of
Yeah.
this just like, okay, these aren't my users, these are my employees. This is Steve in sales. This is this person here that's got, like, how can we like really put that employee lens on the problem? Because at the end of the day, like, while leadership can push things, and I definitely think that like at a leadership level, like you need to be like encouraging the why, and like, hey, this is really important for us as a company. And like, if we have the right data, we'll be able to focus all of our energy on the right things, and we'll all make more money. And like that leadership piece is important, and focusing on like, what is it that's going to motivate people. But at the end of the day, like, if you don't have buy-in from your users, you're just not going to get any of the value. So it doesn't matter how fancy and cool of an automation you build out if people aren't actually like using it every day. And so my focus has shifted on like, how can I like really, help, I guess, evangelize almost what Salesforce should be like in a company, so that it's not just like that software, if that makes sense.
And your journey to Spekit is a perfect example. Like, they're ready to trash a perfectly good system because no one asked the why, and no one, was adopting it and using it. But I mean, the why is huge. I tell new clients all the time in like one of our first requirements call, or even in scoping, I am going to be a toddler. I'm going to ask you why, and I'm probably going to ask you why 3 or 4 times. Not because I didn't hear you, but because I need to understand what you're trying to get at here. Like you said, Christy, having 50 fields that are like open text. What is the goal here? Never to have consistent data, then we're nailing it. But like asking the whys and being the salesperson, even if you're the consultant or the admin, is, I mean, it's spot on. You're 100% right.
So
And
I'm assuming that saving Salesforce got you to like a cushy good spot after 2 years, right? So what
Yeah,
encouraged
right?
you to like then be like, just kidding, now I want to leave and start my own company?
so actually it got me to a really good spot, just like generally within the company, because so my first like year and a half was kind of like rebuilding and stuff. And then like about a year in is when I started looking at like learning management solutions, like knowledge bases, digital adoption platforms, like what were the different ways that other companies were solving this. And then at that time I'd handed Salesforce, like I was still like the product owner from like a strategic standpoint, but we had like admins and developers. So I wasn't like handling the day to day. I was handling our business operations. So it was a finance company, loan operations, servicing operations, all that stuff. And then our CEO actually moved on and we got a new CEO, and this was like a real CEO. Like like meaning like he wasn't a startup CEO, like, and I'm a startup CEO. He was like number 3 at Goldman Sachs back in his day, and like CEO of Cushman Wakefield before then. And so he came in and he's like, we need to like clean up shop, and in the sense like, you know, put process in place and like really scale this team and stuff. And he asked me to be his chief of staff. So essentially his second command in terms of like working with, like, we didn't have a COO. So basically like working with the leadership team and like doing all that. And he gave me the promotion the week after I found out that Zari, who is now my co-founder and like the most amazing human ever, was going to leave the company. And her and I like weren't like super, super, you know, close at the time. But she was someone that I had like the utmost respect for, because she was like the top product manager at the company, and like anyone that had a problem on the tech side like went to her, and she was just incredible. And her and I had really only like kind of overlapped paths kind of in these like larger kind of strategic meetings, and then like we'd be like walking out of the room and like have small talk, right? What we were talking about, like what we missed about kind of office culture. The times that we'd bonded was like getting water after a meeting, or like walking in a meeting, getting with our coffees, right? We hadn't like ever gone to lunch or anything like that. And when I found out she was leaving, I'm like, oh my gosh. And I slacked her. I'm like, meet me by the elevators. And I hadn't told anyone that I already had the name and stuff, but I hadn't told anyone that I'd been like thinking about this like Spekit thing. And I pitched her on it, and she's like, yeah, you guys should totally buy it. Like, you guys absolutely need that. I'm like, no, we should build it. She's like, oh. And at the
that's different.
Yeah, no, different. And at the time, and like I was saying that like super confidently because I knew that I was never gonna like actually go build it, you know. And then she was super burnt out, and she's like, you know what, I need to go to like Fiji or Rio, wherever she went with her husband for a few weeks. And she did, and she was like messaging me while she's in Fiji or wherever she was, and she's like, I can't stop thinking about this. Like I get it. Like, let me, like, she's like, here's kind of how I'm thinking about it. I was like, yeah, that's how I'm thinking about it too. And then like, basically the next few months we started working on it. I got that promotion. I was like, this is an opportunity of a lifetime. Like, I need to like work under this guy. And so I was like trying to do both, like working insane hours under him and stuff. And then finally got to the point where Zari's like, hey, if you're not going to like be all in here, like I'm going to quit the job, you know? And
it's a win it.
Yeah. And my dad was like, you know, I was like really conflicted because I finally making the money that I wanted to be making. I had like gotten like this incredible learning opportunity. And at the same time, like I had this like really, you know, potentially good idea, still TBD. And my dad, like, it was actually the one that we're having a conversation with him because he's in finance. It's like, he's going to be more risk averse. So it's going to be great. He's going to talk me out of it.
Yeah. He's going to say, don't do it. And you'll be like, phew.
Yeah. And he's like, well, he's like, you know, at the end of the day, it's rare that you find a partner, a business partner that you really think could be a good, you know, would be the right fit for this, that you guys find an idea that you think has like real legs on it, and that you're at a point in your career where like you have little to lose, meaning like you're not going to be having to move like a husband across the country. You don't have like little babies that you need to be thinking about all day long. He's like, you're kind of in the perfect spot, and that's rare. He's like, and besides, the biggest question to ask yourself is like, if you think, you know, 20 years from now, what are you going to regret less? Right? Are you going to regret taking a chance, failing, and knowing that you'll probably be okay down the road, or never having tried? And I was like,
that eat at you.
It's like, oh gosh, darn it.
Dad's being all wise again.
And here I am. So
how did you get to Spekit? You said that you had the name early on. Why?
Because every time because people like designing Salesforce, like, and like all the requirements, whenever like someone was like asking me questions, I was like, write me a spec, like go write the specifications down in a document around like what you need me to build. And my whole like idea originally was like, okay, the best time to write documentation, because no one likes writing documentation, myself included, is when you're writing the specifications of like, what is this field used for? What's the why and stuff? If you're being a correct product manager, you're asking your users to like put that together. I was like, oh, so go Spekit and Spekit. No?
I like it. Da-da-da.
And then it all
Yeah.
connects. So then it was an octopus.
The octopus. So the octopus like came.
Oh, is that why?
So wait, what?
Because it all connects. I made that up.
No, so
Oh.
yeah, no, but no, like the tentacles, yeah, totally. The whole idea of Spekit, like, so we were like leading up to Dreamforce, and I was like, man, like, well, and we'd always like said,
Clearly
like,
we need a stuffed animal to give away at Dreamforce. So.
100%.
obviously.
And so we were like, well, what's a cute stuffed animal? And we'd always like laugh that like, oh, like when you're describing Spekit, because the way that Spekit is like, it's this application where like all of your knowledge and training and content is stored, right? But then we have extensions, right, into all your workflows. We have a Slack extension, we have an Outlook, we have Chrome, we have a Lightning component. And so the whole idea is like all of your knowledge is centralized, but we have little tentacles into all of your workflows.
I like it. It's very nice.
So I mean, you're in sales and marketing now.
Yeah, it's true.
Honestly, marketing is so fun. I wish I could have my whole life. Just
to test out all the swag pens.
Oh, we're launching a new Spekit sauces. We're big on like the alliteration. Spekit sauces webinar. Like
I like sauces, like dipping sauces.
Yeah, eventually we'll have our own like actual sauce. But right now it's like
I'm a pretty good sauce maker. I'm just saying.
I mean, if you
need a cook in the kitchen,
that'd be our first. Like, it'll be a good sauce. Maybe it can be like a seafood sauce on theme. I don't know. But
then you eat your octopus.
I know. I love octopus. But no, the whole idea is like Spekit secret sauces. So like basically like interviewing, like actually tomorrow I have my first one with one of our customers, Dan. He's the CIO of this cool company, Northmark, and he came in as like with an open like slate. It's just like, hey, you need to transform our organization. So basically asking him to talk about like, well, how did like you came in, like what were the first steps? Like how did you evaluate like where you guys were and like what you're doing? So it's just like hearing from people that have like done some like really crazy things related to transformation in their careers, and like hearing kind of like how did you buy in, how'd you ask for budget, like how'd you build a business case to bring on this tool or that, and like